When your goal is to build muscle, you may have heard you need to eat in a calorie surplus to do so. While it's true for anyone who's not a beginner you need to eat to grow, this doesn't mean you need to gain unnecessary fat dirty bulking. So today I'm going to show you how to use a reverse diet to lean bulk, give you macros to hit, and set you up to make all the gains without slapping on a ton of fat.
Hey, this is Colin DeWay. If you're interested in mastering your metabolism and building muscle and getting shredded and all the things that are involved with training and nutrition, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click on that bell notification so you don't miss anything, because this is all we talk about here. So I frequently talk about reverse dieting and how to use it to improve your metabolism, especially if you have a long history of dieting. It's something that can be really helpful. But one thing not very many people talk about is how you can use reverse dieting to help with building muscle, especially if you want to minimize the amount of fat gain that you have during the process. That being said, when you finish a cut and you're going into a building phase, one thing you need to consider is that your body is not going to be in the best position to build after a diet because of the hormonal adaptations that happen from dieting. So a lot of the more anabolic hormones such as testosterone are going to be lower, and thus it's going to make it much more difficult to build muscle in the earlier stages after a cut. Not only do you have the hormonal adaptations, but you're just not going to be feeling the best after a dieting phase. You're not going to recover as well. You're not going to feel as good. You're not going to have as much energy, and it just makes it more difficult to build. And this is why I don't typically recommend making big increases right off the bat after a cutting phase, because your body's not in the best position to handle it. Keep in mind, I'm not speaking to those who may have come off of like a show prep and who are extremely lean. There can be different scenarios for those people. I'm talking more for the general population who goes through more typical cuts and bulks. So anyway, instead of just focusing on going right into your building phase, I do recommend taking a smaller phase of just reverse dieting, just trying to get your metabolism into a better position. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video, because I am going to take you through step by step how to get there. Basically what you do is you start the reverse process here and you focus on roughly maintaining your weight. You focus more on getting your metabolism to speed back up, start feeling better, performing better, and focus on that portion of things. And as you continue to get your calories up over time, eventually you'll naturally get into this lean bulking phase. And this is where you should start focusing on how much weight you should gain, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But first, I think it's important to point out that if you really want to focus on building muscle, you do have to be okay with putting on some body fat. Now, this doesn't mean you should do like a lot of people do and make the mistake of just kind of eating everything in sight and dirty bulking and not caring about how much weight you should gain. Because while you do need to be in a calorie surplus to optimally build muscle, you really only need a small surplus, and there is a tipping point where if you gain more body fat, you aren't going to build more muscle, but you will build more body fat. Remember, it is a difficult process building muscle, and it's a very slow process. Storing fat, however, is very easy to do and can happen really quickly. So this is where we need to look at the pace of weight gain to kind of be our guide and tell us if we're gaining at an appropriate rate or if we're gaining too fast. And in my opinion, you should look to gain between about 0.2% and 0.5% of your body weight on average per week. This will make sure that you're eating enough to optimally build, but not so much that you're storing unnecessary fat. Now, there's a couple factors to consider here with regards to which side of the range you should be towards, and that is how experienced you are with training and how important it is for you to build or stay a little bit leaner while you build. Also, keep in mind that you won't always hit this exact pace every week. That doesn't mean you have to always make changes. This is just kind of a rough average in general. If you're newer to training, it's going to be easier for you to build muscle, so you could potentially be a little bit more aggressive as you're going to be able to put on more size. But on the flip side, you can also consider that if you're brand new to training, you'll be able to burn fat and build muscle simultaneously, so you don't necessarily need a load of extra calories to build that muscle. Now, if you're someone who's been lifting a long time and is very experienced, now it's going to be much more difficult to build muscle, and a very aggressive surplus is probably not going to be the best idea here, as you're going to need to really take your time. Consider also, if you really want to try to stay as lean as possible, then you need to make it on the lower side of things so that you can do so. But if you really want to just build as much muscle as possible, then it makes more sense to be a little bit more aggressive and stay on the higher range of things, just to ensure that you're optimally building. Now keep watching, because I'm going to tell you how fast you should increase your calories, and I'm also going to tell you how long you should do this for. But first, I want to talk about macros to make sure you're eating in a way that will support your muscle building goals. Hopefully you already know how many calories you're eating, but if you don't worry. Just continue to eat the way you've been eating, and just take the next few days up to a week and just eat the same, but now track it so you get a general idea of what your calories look like. Once you have your calories, the first thing we want to set is your protein goal, because protein is by far the most important macro and the macronutrient that's basically responsible for building muscle. What you want to do is make sure you're eating at least 0.8 grams per pound of body weight to max out the anabolic response from protein. However, I prefer to stay on the safer side of things and eat around 1 gram per pound of body weight, or even up to 1.2 pounds in some instances, especially if you really like protein. Plus, protein has more benefits than just besides the anabolic effects, such as the thermic effect of food, which is very high, and is much more satiating. So especially in the earlier stages of a reverse diet, when hunger signals are messed up from your gut, having that extra protein can help you feel fuller. Once you have your protein set, now you want to set your fat macro next, and you want to eat between about 20 and 30% of your calories from fat. If you prefer fat over carbs, then aim on the higher side of things. If you prefer carbs over fat, then aim on the lower side. That being said, I do like to aim right around 25% for most people, and I do like to try to push more carbs when possible because it will aid in performance. It has a little bit more of an anabolic effect, and if you perform better in the gym, you're more likely to build more muscle. But keep in mind two things. We always have to think about sustainability, and if you really prefer fat over carbs just because you like it more, that's going to help you stick to your diet better. Plus, some people just find that they perform better and feel better on a higher fat diet. Not everyone's the same. So if you find that you do better with more fat, do what works best for you. And then once you have your fat and protein set, the remainder of your calories left all go towards carbs. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about how to start your reverse diet and how to adjust calories as you go through your reverse and switch over into a lean bulk. If you have just finished your cut and you're starting into the reverse, you can typically be more aggressive in the beginning stages, and I often even recommend just starting with about diet break numbers, which would be usually about between 200 and 300 calories more, mostly through carbs. However, if you want to be cautious about weight gain in the beginning, or especially if you were finding that you were really having a hard time losing at the ending stages of your cut, you may want to be less aggressive and make a more moderate approach of around maybe 100 calories, or even with the numbers that I recommend after you start a reverse. So if you're already gaining weight and you're having a hard time with it, you're going to want to be less aggressive and maybe make about a 20 to 40 calorie increase, or you can even hold steady for a while until the body kind of settles a little bit. If when you're increasing your calories, you are able to maintain your weight pretty well, you can be a little bit more aggressive and take a more moderate approach of about 40 to 60 calories per week. And if you're losing weight during the reverse, you can be more aggressive here and increase between about 60 and 100 calories, or even more in some cases, especially if you're losing fast and you want to get towards the muscle building sooner than later. So when you make these adjustments, you would eat the exact same amount every single day throughout the week and then adjust again the following week. So for instance, if you're eating 2,000 calories every day for 1 week and then you increase your calories by 50, the next week you'd eat 2,050 calories every day of the week. Or if you prefer to keep some refeeds or some training day and non-training day macros, that's fine. You just make the same calorie bump to those different days. Also, if you're doing a lot of cardio, you're probably going to want to start tapering that down and get it to a more reasonable level. I do still typically recommend you get at least 30 to 60 minutes of cardio per week because it does have some nice health benefits, and it will also help with things like work capacity in the gym. So even though cardio can have an interference effect with muscle building, that's only in bigger amounts, and a smaller amount is not going to hurt you and can actually help you. Anyway, as you go through this reverse process, you'll find that eventually you'll get to a place where you won't be able to increase calories anymore, and you'll continue to gain a little bit each week. And assuming you're in that 0.2 to 0.5% range, now you've basically naturally progressed into that lean bulk, and you just hold those calories as long as you're gaining at the appropriate rate. So the question usually becomes, how am I going to know when this is? And you'll basically know because of the amount of weight gain that you're having. From here, you just continue to hold these calories until you stop gaining weight, and then you can make some small adjustments to get it going again. However, I find that once you get to the actual lean bulking stage, most of the time people can hold these calories not only for several weeks, but often several months until needing to make a small adjustment again. Using this method is a great way to ensure that you're building enough muscle, but also not storing extra body fat that you don't need to, that you'll just have to cut off later down the road. It also makes it more likely that you're going to spend a sufficient amount of time in your building phase to build the muscle that you're after, because one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people make is to constantly cut back every time they start feeling a little uncomfortable with the weight, and they never really get anywhere in terms of actually building the muscle they want. So make sure you're really patient with the process and give the body an ample amount of time to build the muscle that you're after, which means spending significantly more time building than you are cutting. And the nice part of using the reverse process to actually build muscle is it takes longer for you to gain weight and therefore makes it less likely for you to freak out and cut way too soon. Now you're probably wondering how long you should build for, and honestly it just depends on so many different variables, but kind of a general rule that I can give that I would say that works for a lot of people is to spend double the amount of time that you cut building. So for instance, if you cut for 6 months, well then you're gonna build for a year plus. If you cut for 4 months, then you're gonna build for 8+ months. That's a huge oversimplification, and it's not like the golden rule, but it's a good starting point. And the point is, the longer you can spend not dieting, the more muscle you're gonna build, and the better you're gonna build your metabolism up and be in a good spot metabolically to crush your cut when that time comes. Okay, there's one more thing you can do here to make sure you're building as much muscle as possible, and that's how you time your meals, especially your protein-containing meals, to take advantage of the leucine threshold and maximize the anabolic response from your food. So make sure you check out this video where I look at research to determine what's the most optimal way to eat your protein, not only with regards to how frequently you should do it, but how much you should eat in each meal. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will definitely get back to you. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.